The sky was dark, and clouds moved slowly like shadows of forgotten dreams. It was past midnight, and most of the small countryside town was asleep. But far away in the woods, something bright fell from the sky. It looked like a star at first. But then it exploded in silence. No sound, no warning, just a blinding flash and smoke rising between the trees. John Miller was walking back to his small cabin after checking the fences. He was a quiet man, an ex-soldier who now lived alone. With only his dog, Max, he saw the flash from the hill and felt a strange heat in the air. It wasn't lightning, and it wasn't a plane crash. It was something else, something not from Earth. John grabbed his old rifle, put on his jacket, and followed the trail of smoke. Max barked nervously, but followed. After 20 minutes, they reached a deep part of the forest where trees were broken and grass was burned. There, in the middle of a shallow crater, it's a strange-looking ship. It was no bigger than a car. Made of black metal that shimmered like oil, it was half buried in dirt. One side cracked open like an egg. John raised his rifle and slowly walked closer. The air smelled like burning wires and something sweet. He expected to find a pilot or maybe a machine, but what he found shocked him. Inside the cracked ship were two small children. They were not human. Their skin was a soft blue. Their hair white like snow. Their eyes were glowing faintly. Closed as if in sleep, they were breathing, barely. And wrapped in silver blankets, John dropped his rifle and stepped inside the ship. The heat was fading, but he could still hear a humming sound. He touched one of the children, the girl, and she flinched. The boy opened his eyes slowly, and for a second their eyes met. John expected fear, but instead saw peace. Just then, Max growled and barked toward the sky. John looked up and saw two red lights blinking above the trees. Drones, probably military, were scanning the area. He had seen these machines during his time in secret missions. If they found the ship, they would take the children, experiment on them, or worse. No one would ever know the truth. John made a decision in that moment, a choice that would change the future. He picked up both children, wrapped them tighter, and ran through the forest. The drone scanned the crash but didn't detect life by the time soldiers arrived. John was long gone, hiding in the shadows of the hills. Back at his cabin, John made a small bed for the twins. He gave them water, cleaned their wounds, and waited. He didn't know what they were or why they had come, but he knew they needed help, and right now, he was the only one who could give it. Days passed, and the children began to recover. John named them Lyra and Kale. They didn't speak, but their eyes followed him everywhere. Sometimes they touched objects and made them float slightly. Sometimes they stared at the stars for hours, as if remembering something. John told no one. Not even the sheriff who visited once a week. He lied, said he was sick, said he didn't need any help. He kept the twins hidden, taught them how to act normal, how to smile, how to play, but deep down, he knew this peace would not last. One night, Lyra woke up suddenly and walked to the window. Kale followed her, both of them staring into the dark woods. They began whispering, in a strange language one John had never heard. It sounded like music and code at the same time. John stepped outside, confused and a little afraid. The wind blew stronger, and the trees seemed to bend. He looked up at the sky and saw nothing, but felt everything, like something big was watching, waiting, listening. He turned to the twins and said softly, "Who are you?" Lyra turned to him, her glowing eyes full of calm and mystery. She didn't answer, but placed her small hand on his chest. For a moment, John saw a vision, a golden city in space, 2 thrones, and a great war. He gasped. The vision disappeared, and Lyra fell back, tired. John held her, heart pounding. This was not just a crash, not just an accident. This was a beginning, and he had no idea what was coming next. The morning after the vision, John didn't speak a word. He sat on the porch with a cup of black coffee, hands shaking slightly. The memory of that golden city was still fresh in his mind. Not a dream, not a fantasy. It was something real, something planted inside his head by a child who wasn't from Earth. Inside the cabin, Lyra and Cale slept peacefully. They looked like normal kids now, if you ignored the glowing veins that pulsed gently under their skin. The way they healed overnight was unnatural, and the fact that they could speak in a language unknown to Earth added to the mystery, but John had already made his choice. They were his now, and he would raise them no matter what they truly were. Over the next few months, life changed in strange ways. John had to teach them everything: how to hold a spoon, how to wear shoes, how to say thank you. They learned fast, too fast. In just a week, Cale was reading signs and road maps, and Lyra was sketching perfect images of Earth animals she had never seen. They never cried, never got sick, and never asked questions, but they often stared at the stars for hours, as if waiting for someone to call them home. John started writing a secret journal. He kept track of the twins' habits, their powers, and the strange things that happened around the house. One time, the old radio played music even though it wasn't plugged in. Another time, John caught Cale floating 3 inches above the bed while asleep. They weren't trying to scare him. They were simply different still. He gave them a normal life, as normal as possible. He built them a small treehouse in the backyard, taught them how to roast marshmallows and skip rocks in the river. He taught Cale how to chop wood and Lyra how to plant tomatoes. They laughed, they played, they called him Dad without ever being told to. And John, who once believed he would die alone, began to believe in family again. But peace never lasts long, not when secrets burn like fire under the skin. One rainy evening, Lyra stood in front of the mirror. She touched her reflection and asked quietly, "Why do I look like this?" John didn't have an answer, so she walked outside, sat in the mud, and drew a symbol with her finger. It glowed for a second, then vanished. That night, Cale built something out of spare metal parts from the garage. John thought it was a toy, until it started blinking and beeping. Cale tilted his head and said, "It's calling someone, I think." John snatched it up and threw it into the fire, his voice loud and full of fear. "No calling, no signals, no more surprises," he said. Cale just looked at him with calm, glowing eyes and said, "But they're already looking for us." John didn't sleep that night. He stood at the window with his rifle, staring into the dark woods. The air felt heavy, like it did the night of the crash, and for the first time in months, he felt the soldier inside him return. He had protected them from hunger, from weather, from questions, but how would he protect them from the stars? It started with a dream. Cale saw stars falling backward, like water flowing into the sky. He stood on a balcony made of glass, looking over a burning world. Beside him stood Lyra, wearing something that looked like armor. Below them, a million voices called out a name he didn't know, but somehow it belonged to him. He woke up gasping, heart racing, glowing symbols flickering on his palms. Lyra was already awake, staring at him with wide eyes. "I saw it too," she whispered. Neither of them spoke after that. The next day, they were silent during breakfast. John noticed but didn't push them. He had learned that silence often meant something bigger was happening inside their minds. Later that afternoon, Cale returned to the garage. He wasn't trying to build a toy this time. He took old watches, radio parts, even broken solar lights, and began crafting something new. His hands moved on their own, guided by memory that didn't belong to Earth. By evening, the object was finished. It looked like a small crystal ball with wires wrapped around it. Like vines, he held it gently and whispered, "Wake up." The device lit up with blue fire, pulsing softly. A high-pitched hum filled the air, like a song from a place far beyond the stars. Lyra ran to him, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. The cabin shook lightly, glass vibrated. And Max barked non-stop. John rushed in, saw the device, and felt something deep in his chest, like gravity pulling the wrong way. "What is that?" he demanded, grabbing the device from Cale. Cale didn't resist, but his voice was steady. "I didn't build it, Dad," he said. "I remembered it." Before John could ask more, the device blinked once, then shot a beam of blue light. Straight up through the roof and into the sky. It was silent, fast, and gone within seconds. But John knew exactly what had just happened. A signal had been sent, and someone had heard it, far across the galaxy, beyond the human eye. The signal raced through wormholes, bounced between dark satellites, and landed on a forgotten planet covered in red sand. Inside a massive throne room made of black stone. The signal activated an ancient machine. A robotic eye scanned the pulse and confirmed it. Royal bloodline confirmed, heirs detected. The message repeated, and somewhere in the shadows, a tall, armored figure smiled. "Find them," he growled, voice like cracking metal. Before they remember everything, back on Earth, the twins grew quiet that night. Lyra drew strange shapes on paper, maps of stars and symbols no human had ever seen. Cale whispered numbers in his sleep, numbers that sounded like coordinates. John stood by the fireplace, holding a glass of water that trembled in his hand. He had fought in wars, seen things he wished he could forget, but nothing had ever made him feel this kind of fear, because this wasn't just about raising children anymore. This was about protecting the future of something much bigger than Earth. And now, Earth might no longer be safe. Not for them, not for him. Not for anyone. The night sky over the forest changed. But no one noticed, not the sleeping town nearby. Not the wind passing through the trees. Only the animals sensed it. The birds flew in circles. The wolves howled without reason. And Max, John's dog, refused to leave the cabin's porch. Cale and Lyra were standing in the field behind the cabin, barefoot in the wet grass, their eyes fixed on the stars above, as if waiting for something only they could feel. They didn't speak, didn't blink. Then, all at once, they both whispered, "They found us." Inside the cabin, John was cleaning his old rifle. Kay didn't hunt anymore, not for years, but tonight his hands moved like muscle memory. Something inside him knew this peace wouldn't last. Something had shifted the moment that signal lit the sky. Then the wind stopped completely. The forest froze in silence, as if the world had taken one long breath and refused to let it out. A low hum began to rise from the trees, not from Earth, not natural. John stepped outside and saw the air shimmer like heat waves. Then it appeared, not a ship, not a beam of light. It was a tear in the sky, a thin crack opening in the air above the forest. From it stepped a tall creature covered in silver armor, face hidden behind a black mask. No sound, no fire, just presence. Heavy and cold, the figure looked at Cale and Lyra with a kind of hunger. "Royal cargo located," it said in a voice that sounded like broken glass. John didn't hesitate. He raised the rifle and fired. The bullet stopped in midair. Frozen like time itself, the armored creature tilted its head. Almost amused, Lyra screamed, and her scream wasn't human. It shook the trees, cracked the cabin window, and made the creature step back. Cale raised his hand, and for the first time, fire appeared in his palm. Blue fire that danced like lightning. The twins stood between John and the hunter, their powers glowing brighter than ever. "Leave him alone," Lyra said, her voice full of command. The hunter paused, then took one slow step forward. "Your protector is not part of this. But his blood will paint the warning," it replied. It raised its weapon, a long spear of shifting energy, and aimed it at John. Then, everything happened at once. Cale threw the fire. Lyra pushed with her mind, and John pulled them both behind him. The blast hit the ground where they had just stood, tearing a hole in the earth. Trees exploded, rocks flew like shrapnel, and the sky above flickered with red light. But when the smoke cleared, the hunter was gone, vanished, no footprints, no sound, just the smell of burnt air. Cale fell to his knees, shaking. Lyra helped him up, whispering something in their alien tongue. John stood there, breathing hard, trying to understand what had just happened. He looked at the sky, still cracked and glowing. It was not a dream. They had come, and they would come again, inside the cabin. John found his old military radio and tried every channel. No one answered. No government alarm. No alert. Nothing. Either no one saw it, or no one was allowed to talk about it. He turned to the twins and asked, "What do they want?" Cale looked down, his voice quiet. "They want to stop us from remembering who we are." John didn't speak. He just looked at them, his strange, glowing children, and wondered how far he was willing to go to protect them. The night returned to silence, but now it was a silence filled with fear. Because now the stars weren't just watching, they were reaching down. The cabin no longer felt like home. It felt like a hiding place built too close to a storm. John sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the cracked photo frame of his younger self in uniform. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of everything he didn't understand. Outside, the twins were silent, staring at the broken tree where the alien hunter had landed. They hadn't spoken much since the attack, but their eyes told him they remembered more than they were saying. That evening, Cale did something strange. He opened the closet, pulled out a box of tools, and walked into the woods without a word. John followed him quietly, keeping his distance. Cale walked until they reached the crash site. Now, just a burned crater with no sign of the ship. But Cale wasn't looking for the ship. He knelt beside a tree and began digging into the dirt with his hands. After a few minutes, he uncovered a smooth silver plate shaped like a disc. He pressed his palm against it, and it glowed softly. A soft hum rose, and suddenly, a hologram appeared in the air, shimmering like fog and light. It showed two tall aliens standing beside a throne, a baby in each of their arms, and a large crowd bowing before them. Cale's eyes widened, his lips trembling. "That's us," he whispered. John stepped closer, heart pounding. The hologram changed. Now showing a battle, ships in the sky, explosions, fire across a golden city. The tall aliens, the twins' parents, were surrounded, holding the infants tight. Then the father inserted a chip into each child's neck, and the screen faded to black. Cale touched his own neck slowly. "I remember him," he said. "I remember their voices." Lyra appeared beside them, silent tears falling from her glowing eyes. "He said we'd come back one day," she whispered. The disc spoke in a voice that echoed softly through the trees. "Royal blood confirmed. Heirs of Zehron located, memory seal unlocking." And just like that, everything changed. The forest around them began to shift. The trees bent backward slightly. As if reacting to a silent energy, Cale fell to the ground, clutching his head. Memories flooding into him like a crashing wave. He saw planets, battles, languages he had never learned but somehow understood. Lyra saw the same. Her knees weak, her heart racing, she saw her mother's smile. Her father's final words. "Survive, grow strong, come home." John knelt between them, helpless, watching his adopted children relive a history that didn't belong to Earth. When they finally stood, they were no longer just alien kids. They were something more. "I remember everything," Lyra said, her voice calm and sharp like a sword. "Our planet was Zehron. We were born into a royal bloodline, and we were sent here to stay alive," Cale added. "The Empire fell, but the rebels believe we can bring it back, that we're the last hope." John felt dizzy, like the ground itself had shifted under him. So, what happens now? He asked. Kale looked up at the stars, eyes glowing brighter than ever. They're not coming to find us, he said. They're coming to stop us from returning. Lyra turned to John and said something he never expected. We're sorry. Dad, but Earth is no longer safe. Not for us, not for you. John looked at the two kids he had raised like his own. And even with all the fear and confusion, he knew one thing was clear. He wouldn't let anyone take them, not from the stars. Not from the shadows, not from fate itself. The truth of their blood had awakened something ancient. And the future was no longer written on Earth. It was waiting in the stars. Asterisk, the sky above Earth opened for the second time, but this time it was not a crack, not a warning. It was a door. High above the forest, a ring of silent blue light spun. In the clouds, from its center, a silver ship slid through space like a blade through water. No fire, no noise, no radar could detect it, but the twins could feel it in their bones. Zeron technology, ancient and alive. John stood at the edge of the woods, rifle in hand. Watching the impossible, beside him stood Kale and Lyra, calm but alert, their eyes glowing brighter than ever. She found us, Lyra said quietly. Who? John asked. Kale smiled for the first time in days. Captain Ressa, my mother's old war general. She was part of the royal resistance. The ship landed softly on a clearing of untouched grass. Its doors opened with a hiss, revealing a tall, alien woman in black armor. Her face had scars of war. But her eyes softened when she saw the twins. She knelt before them, hand over heart, and said, The stars still remember your blood. Lyra stepped forward and asked, Are we too late? Ressa shook her head. No, but time is thinning. General Drex controls the throne, and soon he will destroy the last rebel systems. John looked at the ship, then at the kids. Are you sure you want to go? He asked. Kale turned to him. His voice steady. We don't want to, but we have to. Lyra placed her hand on John's chest, just like she did the night of the vision. You gave us a life when we had nothing. Now we have to fight for where we came from. John knew. He couldn't stop them. But he also knew one more thing. He wouldn't let them go alone. I'm coming with you, he said. Ressa raised an eyebrow. You're human. John smiled faintly. I'm their father. The ship rose from Earth, and the planet faded. Into the distance, for the first time, John saw the galaxy through the window. Stars so close, they felt like sparks. But this was no joyride. They were heading straight into a war, on the way to Zeron. Ressa briefed them. The Empire is ruled by Drex now. A former advisor who killed your parents after the royal fleet was ambushed. He erased history, burned libraries, wiped your names from every system. But rebels kept the old truth hidden. They believe you are the lost heirs, and they are waiting. Kale clenched his fists. What if they don't believe we're real? Ressa replied, They don't need belief. They need hope. As the ship entered Zeron's orbit, the twins saw their homeworld for the first time. It was nothing like they imagined. Once golden cities now covered in ash, skies filled with ships like vultures, statues of their parents broken and left to rot. Their hearts burned, not just with memory, but with duty. But everything fell apart the moment they landed. The hangar was supposed to be empty. It wasn't. An ambush waited. Masked soldiers wearing the mark of Drex. Ressa shouted, Betrayal. And fired first. Blasters lit up the darkness, and chaos followed. John grabbed the twins and ran. But in the smoke and crossfire, Kale was pulled away. Lyra screamed his name, but it was too late. A flash of light, a portal. And Kale was gone, captured. Lyra collapsed to her knees, tears of fury falling from her eyes. John held her tight, whispering, We'll get him back, I swear it, above them. The throne of Zeron glowed red, waiting, and General Drex watched from his tower, smiling coldly. "The boy is mine now," he said. "Let the girl come find him." Zeron was burning again, but this time it was not falling. It was waking up from the mountain peaks to the broken towers of the capital. People whispered one word that had been banned for years. Lyra, the lost princess, was no longer hiding. She stood in the rebel war chamber, eyes glowing, fists clenched, voice steady. She had lost her brother, watched her people suffer, and now the choice was clear. Run or rise. "I'm done running," she said. "I'm not here to reclaim a throne. I'm here to end a war." Around her stood the last rebel captains, silent and unsure. They had followed holograms, rumors, broken signals. Now the truth stood before them in the form of a girl raised on Earth. "Why should we follow you?" one of them asked. John stepped forward, scarred, tired, but strong. "Because I've seen what she can do," he said. "And because her brother is in enemy hands. If you don't help her take this planet back, you'll never get another." "Chance," a quiet voice added from the back. "The blood remembers." The room bowed as one. The war for Zarin had begun. Meanwhile, deep inside the fortress tower, Kale sat in a glowing cage of energy. He was bruised, but not broken. General Drex stood before him, tall and cruel. "You don't look like a prince," Drex sneered. Kale didn't answer, just stared at the floor, calm and waiting. Because he wasn't afraid. He knew his sister was coming, outside the capital. Rebel ships cloaked in light began to rise. They came from caves, ruins, junkyards, every corner of resistance. Lyra led them aboard the royal flagship, dressed in armor made from both Earth and Zerontech, a blend of two worlds just like her. John stood beside her on the command deck. "You sure about this?" he asked. She looked at the stars beyond the glass. "No," she said, "but I was never meant to stay small." The battle in the skies of Zeron was loud, bright, and brutal. Rebel fighters dodged Drex's fleet, while Lyra's ship pushed through the clouds like a spear. Every blast that hit them, she felt in her chest, but she kept going. Inside the tower, Kale heard the walls shake. He smiled, closed his eyes, and reached into himself. He whispered his sister's name, and across the sky, Lyra felt it. The final assault began. Lyra stormed the tower, powers burning through steel. She moved like thunder, her mind locked on one goal: bring her brother home. Drex waited on the throne, armor black as night. He clapped slowly. "You came," he said. "I never left," she replied. The battle was fast, brutal and quiet. No crowd watched, no soldiers dared to interfere. Power met power, flame met shadow. And in the end, Lyra stood over him, exhausted but unbroken. Drex fell, not with a scream, but with silence. She ran to Kale's cage and shattered it with one touch. He stood up, smiled weakly, and said, "Took you long enough." Together, the twins walked to the shattered throne. They didn't sit. They stood tall as the people of Zeron gathered below. No crowns, no royal robes. Just fire, truth, and blood that remembered where it came from. John watched from the stairs, pride in his heart. He had raised them to be kind. Not royal, but somehow they'd become both. Lyra looked down at the people and said only one thing: "We are not rulers." She said, "We are a promise," and the stars above Zeron burned brighter than ever before.